Excited about today's topic because it's transformation through inclusion, and Dianne Huggon's a guest, and we're going to dialogue, and then if we have time, some of you can jump in on the theme, on the topic. As with every week, I'm going to do a quick COVID review. I don't know if the review is getting old for people, or if this is still something to keep doing. But I'm doing it this week, and we'll see. Maybe we can get feedback, Carrie, about it. Let me put my phone on silent. The numbers seem really high to me, though. I'm being told our percentages are good. It's nearly 12,000 new COVID viruses over the week. This is a 7-day view compared to last week. So the totals, 550,000. I don't know why I repeated the number twice, because 12,000 is 12,000. It's 550,000 people have had the virus in Massachusetts. And ironically, as you guys know, in the nation, it's over 500,000 deaths. There was 334 deaths over the past week. That's actually 12 fewer than the week before. But it brings us to nearly 16,000 people in Massachusetts having died due to the COVID virus, as far as we know, right? I think they're pretty particular about that. And then USA, we're up to 544,000 new people in 7 days, with 28.35 million. And that's the number, it's up from the previous week, the actual rise, okay? And remember, it's different states reporting, so we don't know. And it's 510, almost 511,000 people died, which is 17,000 more deaths compared to last week. Both rises are less than 2 weeks ago, which is good news. But February 28th, the highest per capita are still, the Dakotas are going strong, which is unbelievable to me. Rhode Island is still up there. Utah is still up there. And Tennessee beat out Arizona this week. So those are the highest per capita virus states right now. As for our congregate care community, since that's that and institutions are the only thing we can report on, can't really report any broader than that. The numbers actually went down overall. They went up a little bit in the state operated piece of it, but they went down overall. And basically, let me show you, they went down by 5. It's not a huge difference, but you have a total of 97 individuals who have COVID, who are COVID positive, less than 5 deaths reported again. But again, that's in a week. So if there's 3 deaths in a week, 3 deaths the week before that, 3 deaths the week before that, and over 6 weeks, that's almost 20 people. The state operating numbers are at 2.5% with COVID positive, the private operator at 1% right now, but overall, the state op recovery numbers are 25%, so 1% better than the private provider, but it's not significant. But this just, when you look at the recovery numbers, that tells you how many people did have COVID. So we're still going through it big time. We're still prioritizing people for the vaccine. And if you go to our site, arcmass.org or the arcofmass.org, if you go to our website, there's 2 alerts we'd love for you to jump on. And on the home page, the first alert is, I'm pretty sure is about, they're both, important alerts. One is about the vaccine and prioritizing all our constituents, all our caregivers. So that's one of, it's either number 1 or number 3 in the news brief. And then the other one is about budget advocacy. And our numbers on these new alerts, they're actually pretty low right now. So we'd love for you to jump in. The last alert, which focused on day programs and certain caregivers, that alert, I think all caregivers have focused on, plus the day program, people attending day programs. That one had 1,500 respondents. That meant 1,500 emails went to the governor. So we really want to encourage you to get the numbers off. This time we're saying, hey, look, everybody. So I want to introduce Dianne Huggon to all of you. And first, and you'll see her picture in a minute. Right now you're seeing Jonathan's picture. And you know what's weird? It's showing me that thing I thought I put in the site, all things possible. Well, I'll figure that out in a minute. But Dianne juggles many roles in her life. A few relative to our world include her work as a support broker, her facilitation, Mass Alliance for 21st Century Policy, which was an outgrowth historically of work we had done with mass families organizing for change. At first, they were the first partner in if you can imagine, ready for this, 92 or 93 at the latest. We started working quarterly meetings to talk about policy. And then the Mass DD Council joined us, and then Mass Advocates Standing Strong was actually the fourth member. So that went on for years. And then we, as that sort of, fell apart as things do after a bunch of years, people are working on other things and leadership changes. We went and started Mass Alliance for 21st Century Policy as an outgrowth of the work we had done with mass families and the other groups. So she's been a volunteer leader for 13 years. She served as the statewide coordinator for Mass Families Organizing for Change. That seems like ancient history now, I bet, Dianne. Not ancient, but a history, right?
That's right.
And she says, I took this because I thought it was just so well put. It's amazing training. The family leadership training is family leadership series, what she was referring to, helped her imagine better in her advocacy for person-centered supports and services that enabled Jonathan's vision to become reality. And that's why she's here today. And the vision she and her husband created 20 years ago for their oldest son, who happened to have cerebral palsy, was a seed planted. And today he has his own vision. And so his site, and it's really irritating me how I did this. I almost, before we send it out, we'll edit it because it's All Things Possible is his site.
You know what, Leo?
Yeah.
His web address is, you have it correct?
I do, okay.
Yeah, and then when you bring it up, then it shows All Things Possible.
Oh, I got it. Okay, so good. So they have the right address. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
And that just shows I was just surprised just now looking at it again today. And then today, and there's your picture right there.
Wow.
Today, we're going to.
Whoa, is that I can't even hide the fact that that's an older picture.
Well, it's funny. I've got pictures I used from 20 years ago all the time, and I love it. And this is actually only from, I'm sure, a few years ago. So today we're not going to talk about how he's thrived, although he has, building on his natural talents and gifts and support of family and friends. We're going to dialogue together when we say transformation through inclusion, how his inclusive life has awakened others, helping them to appreciate their false assumptions upon meeting him and others, and how his inclusion has been a vehicle of transformation. So I'm going to temporarily stop sharing, okay, and get out of here, and so we can talk. And so Dianne, you might want to just say something at the outset, about that journey, because we always think about the individual, right, and the value, right, of inclusion and person-centered planning and all of that. But the reality is, my experience has been a lot of people don't still understand, about people with disabilities, right? And what helps them change to, it seems like his personal experience is the biggest thing. But anyway, you start it the way you want first, because talking about that experience, and you might even want to touch on an example.
Okay, and if I get off track, Leo, I know you're gonna pull me back in.
I'll steer you.
Yeah. So, Jonathan is going to celebrate his 28th birthday next week. And so really the vision, I've always, when I've shared Jonathan's story, my story, I've always shared that his vision started when he was 3.5 years old. And what I realized, especially just recently, as I have been watching home videos, his vision started the day that he was born. We just got caught up in the medical stuff. So the vision that Jonathan had was actually reinforced when his brother was born, and when his sister then came into our life, right? So I have 3 children, but as Adam and Paige were growing older, and once they started developing relationships, friendships, that's when it really helped me to look at the real picture, like, whoa, what's going on? This is not happening in Jonathan's life. So inclusion, that has always been active in our own family. We've never, we've always been one unit. And I find it so funny how the kids, Adam or Paige, when we're reminiscing, they laugh because they shared with me. They said, Mom, I think I was in elementary school when it really hit me that Jonathan has a disability. So that was just like, one of those joyful moments. So, just thinking about transformation through inclusion,
So they weren't, so just to be clear, and sometimes siblings need a transformation experience, but in this case, they didn't need that experience. They were naturally transformed.
right,
In the household.
right. So it was when they started going to school that it really, that it became real for them that, whoa, it's so different for our brother. And Jonathan didn't go to a general ed class until he was 4th grade. And that was at a different elementary school because our neighborhood's elementary school was not accessible to all the floors. Okay, so that was, it was a battle not even to fight because it was reality.
Yeah, and we showed a picture, Diane, of Jonathan, but he's in a wheelchair, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just for people to know, and you want to, like, his verbal ability is limited because of the CP, right?
Right.
Cerebral palsy,
Right.
right? Just for people to understand, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have thoughts going on and ideas and stuff he wants to share. So just for people to appreciate. So he was in another setting, a private, segregated school setting at first, because that's what was available. I mean, time doesn't stop, right? He's got to go to school.
Right.
And you had to accept a school outside of your neighborhood because of the issue with the stairs,
Right. So quick history. So yes, Jonathan has cerebral palsy. He does not speak verbally. However, he communicates incredibly in different ways. He communicates well. And so he started off going to Kennedy Donovan School. We're here in the Southeast region. He needed that school. He was still very sick. But he got to the age where he would have transitioned to the kindergarten level, right? And he had, within a short 2 years, not even, he actually had developed a lot of really great skills. And his teacher, wonderful woman, she sat me down and she said, if he stays here, he's not going to develop as well as he would if he was in a different placement. So at that time, we went ahead and then advocated for him to be in, oh my gosh, what's the name of the program when the agency or the school leases, oh my gosh, I'm blank.
Oh, collaborative or something like that?
Right, yeah. Collaborative program. So here we are in Taunton, and he ended up going to a Berkeley elementary school. That by then I was really involved with the Family Leadership Series, and I had, friends who were like really putting those questions out there. Why is he going? Helping me to understand, the issue.
You're transforming.
Yeah,
in a way,
absolutely.
aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because of Jonathan.
Right.
And the people you've met.
Right. And this is why I thanked him for the journey, because he truly has helped me to transform. So he went
from... Diane, I'm going to steer you someplace else. So I just want to say, do you think, how did you run into the leadership series? How did you even make that connection?
My mom, who was working with Head Start at the time, she was a social worker, and her supervisor came to her. She already knew about, the supervisor knew about, her grandson, and she gave her some papers and said, your daughter may be interested in this. It was all about the family leadership series. When I read it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is everything that we've been talking about. I'm super happy right now because I know my sister, who lives in Virginia, is on, Leo Live right now, and she knows the whole journey. So my mom is the one who brought the information to me. It was the last day to register. I reached out to Emily Nissenbaum, and we had a great conversation. And so again, that was how many years ago? 25 years ago, that I attended the Family Leadership Series. And so from that point, it was constant meeting other families who felt the same, educating myself, understanding, Jonathan's rights. He went from, like I said, Kennedy Donovan to a collaborative program. They lost the space. He ended up at another elementary school, right up the street from us, but not in Taunton. So at that point, my husband and I, when we realized that, oh my gosh, Jonathan has the right to go to school in his own city. So we said, hey, why can't Jonathan go to school in Taunton? And the outside placement person said, well, he can. And I'm like, gosh, why isn't anyone, looking at the student? And so that was, fast forward, left the elementary school. When it was time to go to middle school, the PT at the time said, oh, that's wonderful that Jonathan will be going to Martin Middle. And I said, no, he's not going to Martin Middle. I felt like I needed to explain, we don't live in this neighborhood. The only reason why he's here at this elementary school is because of accessibility. And everyone looked at me and John, and then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just going to push him through the special ed programs that were already set up years ago. Yeah. So we spent a whole year and a half advocating for him to go to his neighborhood middle school. It was in this neighborhood middle school, Friedman Middle, that it really, for Jonathan, his world opened up. He didn't start off in the general ed classroom, but when he reached the 6th grade level, leadership at that time said, okay, well, let's try him in one general ed class. And we chose, everyone agreed on one particular teacher who was like really wonderful personality, lots of fun. Jonathan started in this classroom. I get a phone call from the teacher, and I was just like, oh my gosh, because my son, he's got a great personality, but he also has a side to him where, he likes to make people laugh and, has his own mind. So I called this teacher, and she said, your son put me in tears. Now I'm like, oh, what does that mean, So I immediately thought, problem. No, this teacher called me to say it was the most beautiful thing to see, because what she saw was not this kid in a wheelchair. She saw her other students interacting with this other student and just sharing, the schoolwork with each other. And so what she saw was big possibilities, for this student. So throughout his middle school, it was.
So I just have to jump in because I interned at a middle school for my graduate degree, and middle school is one of the hardest social environments. And here, Jonathan thrived. You had a teacher that clearly was interested, in making this happen. You guys were clearly beforehand interested in making this work. Right. So isn't that amazing to me to hear that? You've just opened up something for me. I'm waiting to hear about the difficult middle school transition he had.
Right.
Not at all.
And it wasn't smooth sailing. We had the challenges without a doubt. that's life. But, I share that because it took one teacher to be able to see, potential,
Yeah.
presume competence. And, so through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, regardless of how many, regular ed classes that he was able to participate in, because we were challenged with MCAS, we have stories. Students after graduating from middle school who shared with their parents, I liked sitting next to Jonathan Huggon because I could look at his communication device and get the answers to whatever test. We always presume competence for Jonathan. And he really is a smart guy. And it was just, okay, how do we help him to express? Everyone says actually that high school, and this is a statement even that came from the psychologist who did his evaluations, never did a neuropsych when he was in school, not until high school, and it was done differently. The bottom line is, before he went into high school, it was at an IEP meeting that was super, super hard. On top of that, my dad had just died, so I was just full of emotions. And I just, it just hit me, everything that was being presented to me by, the IEP team. The psychologist pulled me aside, took me out, and he said, all right, listen, you have to get through this. High school is so much better because, his thought was the students, they like to interact. It's so different. The high school years for Jonathan were the most difficult, most difficult. And it had nothing to do with the students. There were so many students who really wanted to get to know Jonathan and interact with him. But unfortunately, it starts from the top. You have to set the tone.
They put barriers in his way in terms of
Right.
classes, I'm sure. And so let me ask you about going to the topic of transformation during that high school period, or whichever period you want to pick, middle school. Can you think of a story that talks about someone who suddenly woke up, a kid about Jonathan, because of his experience with Jonathan, that, or a teacher or somebody you struggled with even in the school, that suddenly changed when they appreciated who Jonathan was?
I immediately think of a project that he did, and that was, it was titled Speaking Without a Voice or something like that. And it was a project that his speech language pathologist at the time helped him out with. And it was, his project was, I want to say this was maybe, it was either 6th or 7th grade. But what Jonathan did with the help of, his brother, sister, myself, and the speech language pathologist, was that he went ahead and set up, his communication device was set up. We used a tape recorder. This is all about technology, right? Assistive technology. Used a recorder, and so he asked for maybe 4 volunteers, and these students were given a card that said how they were to respond to questions that he was going to ask. And so he asked questions, and for example, one student could only answer the question using their eyes.
Oh, wow.
And then there was another where you could answer the question yes or no. So that's, just to give you an idea. And those students who could not get the rest of the class to understand their answers, you could see their body language, like they were getting anxious, but then they were also given another way to be able to use their eyes with a different kind of question. So the whole project was to help the students understand that even though you don't have a voice, there are other ways that you can express yourself. And, it was also to help the teacher. And one of the principals actually was also present for the project. But it was also to help them to understand that when you're speaking to someone who does not speak verbally, or speaks in a different way, but it has limitations, how you present your questions is going to help that person to be able to answer.
Gotcha.
Not cut and dry, but
Right.
so it was a great experience for everyone. And then there was another, just real quick, 8th grade, the science project. So Jonathan was part of the science project, but what I learned maybe 2 weeks before the science fair was that Jonathan was paired up with a student. I had the understanding that this student was going to help Jonathan, with his project so that he could participate in the science fair. Well, what it was Jonathan was paired up with this student, and Jonathan was to be a part of this other student's project. The bottom line was it was not going where it needed to go. So, I asked Jonathan, do you want to do your own project? Yes or no? And he answered yes. I'm like, are you ready to work hard? Because it's going to be me. We got 2 weeks. And he did some project on, sound and movement. And then for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to school all over again because I had to read the book and help him out. But he worked hard after school. He had to work on his project. He used his a laptop to be able to show a PowerPoint. And so he was part of the science fair. And having people come by and stop and then listen to how he was using his assistive technology, and then looking at the PowerPoint, clearly seeing that the student was able to do what all the other students were doing. So
when that happened, I'm just curious, was that like a school-wide thing, or was it the teacher decided that? How did that, what context was that? As class context, the science fair, or the schools?
Yes, it was the annual science fair for all 8th grade students. And, Jonathan was not part of it until I challenged,
And how did the person who had made that decision, or did you ever get any feedback from that person, awareness, or?
And she's a special education teacher. And to this day, we have a great relationship. Again, assumptions that he's not going to be interested, or we've never done it this way before, so for a science fair, students who have disabilities, regardless of their level, there's got to be something that they can do to be a part of what the other students are doing.
Right, right.
And so,
So on that theme, I've got to jump on something you said one day in a meeting once that I always remember. Exactly on that point. You said to the group, and it ended up, I think we tried to put it in writing somewhere. Why is it when the typical student is interested in, animals and can't be a veterinarian, for example, that they would at least expose him or her to a zoo or some other work, park ranger? And yet if it's a child with a disability who's interested in space and, astronomy, instead of, and yes, he or she may not be able to be an astronaut, but how about something related to that? But no, suddenly he's at the supermarket or, daycare assistant, correct? Do you remember that?
Right, yeah. And we actually took some examples and put it into the MA21, the booklet that came after the MA21 policy.
Yeah, the family one, yeah.
Yeah, so right. Connections into the community. And to this day, the families, any family that I talk with, that is one of the things that I challenge them with. I know a family right now whose son is incredibly talented, with music, and now he takes lessons, private lessons, just like other musicians take private lessons, not part of a special group. So, and that's so important. High school was really challenging. but there were teachers, again, to this day, keep in touch with Jonathan, thank goodness for Facebook, but they really enjoyed having Jonathan in their class. There's one teacher, and he was Adam and Paige's teacher as well, but you know, whenever we have the opportunity to talk, he reminds me, you know, that funny moment with Jonathan, you know, he's doing his thing, teaching, and all of a sudden he hears Jonathan say, "I'm bored," you know, and that gets the other students laughing. So using his communication device with his eyes, you know, he was Mr. Jokester. He would get the class laughing. My son Adam, his girlfriend, you know, she was in one of Jonathan's classes. This is before she started dating Adam, but she has memories of Jonathan using his communication device and making, you know, the other students laugh. So that, you know, and it's not just important for Jonathan, but it's important for other students, you know, to see.
Right. That's exactly, you know, the theme of the transformation for them, huh? And then he's interested in music. Jonathan, he's a photographer too, right? He actually
Right.
composed something.
Mhm.
When he's out there and he's connecting with people, are there some stories around that where you think people made assumptions and then became more aware that he's touched people's lives to not even assume things about themselves, maybe?
Hello.
You
Right.
know, hi Jared, we're in the middle of something. Okay, good to see you. Go ahead.
So, well, you know, I'll use this example for Jonathan, you know, with his music. He, good gracious, but see, the last 3 years of his special education services, he did not go back to the high school. He made that clear that he did not want to go back to the high school once he graduated, right? So it was always, that was part of his vision, right into his IEP. I'm going to graduate 4 years and out. So here in, you know, here in our city, that's the practice, that once the student turns, you know, once the student reaches the 12th grade level, they would either go back to the high school or go to another program, you know, which may be in another high school. But Jonathan did not want to do that. So we advocated really hard, you know, to have what's called Building Futures within the Mascot Group contract with our city.
Right.
And that Jonathan to be able to still work on his IEP goals and have the services provided, but his day started here at his home and ended here in his home.
Wow.
So he didn't have to go to a school. The best 3 years of his life under special ed services. So this is, you know, again, on the topic of music, loves music, yes. And so his team at that time, you know, person-centered planning, where can Jonathan go? Who can he connect with to help him to be able to like dig deeper into that interest in music? Well, we have a music store just one town over, and they have open mic night. I'm going to pretend that we're not in the pandemic, right?
Okay, yes, you have to.
So yeah, so open mic night, which was held on Thursday nights, and he would go, and it was the beginning of meeting people and they meeting Jonathan. Well, at that time, he was also taking private lessons or getting private lessons from this guy who Jonathan met on campus over at UMass Dartmouth University. And he agreed to meet with Jonathan on a weekly basis and help Jonathan to learn about, you know, the basics to help him to compose music. Well, that led to Jonathan, you know, following this guy who ended up working at his now wife's, their family music store. And Jonathan was able to compose his first music. And then they started talking about lyrics, and we were like, well, Jonathan doesn't have the ability to write, and how is that going to work out because the communication isn't that easy. So I thought, let me contact my uncle, who is he's a singer and entertainer. So I contacted my, hey, Uncle Ronnie, listen, Jonathan's got this song that he composed. You know, we need some lyrics. And my Uncle Ronnie was like, Dianne, I don't know what to write. And I said, well, here's the title. The name of it is My Family. That's what he wanted, My Family. I said, Jonathan, get into his heart and think about if he could just easily put it out there, his thoughts, what would he say? When my uncle sent us the lyrics, we were all blown away. Jonathan didn't use all of them, but there were certain words that clearly it was like Jonathan had written them. So we took that, I keep saying we, I had no part of it. So they helped Jonathan to finalize his song. They talked with, it's called Rick's Music World, where he was going for open mic. And they said, he wants to go ahead and perform. So his teacher at the time, his sister, who is, and she plays all different instruments, self-taught. She played the drums. His teacher agreed to sing the lyrics, and he was playing the guitar. And then a neighbor friend played bass. So they all got together, had a quick rehearsal, and Jonathan got up on stage, and everyone in the audience was able to see the guy who used to come in just to hear and listen to all the other performers. They got to see this guy on stage perform. From that time, that moment, it went from the guy who showed up on Thursday nights to the musician. They had no idea
Wow.
how talented Jonathan was.
This is what we're talking about, the transformation that can happen. And what a great, we got to package that story. Was he digitally performing, or mainly the composition, Dianne, with this, with the composition that he wrote with the band?
No, it was, if I understand your question correctly, his teacher, his sister, and the friend all took a piece of his, and it was also set up where Jonathan was able to say, state one lyric, one part of the lyric, and on his communication device. But
that's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah. So, but he was up on stage, and it was
right.
This is my song.
Right.
So you shared his website, and the whole thing with his photography, when he was in high school, he had this one particular teacher who was his one-on-one for a short period of time, but it was like he came at the right time. Jonathan's communication device has a camera. And so the thought was, well, he has a camera. Well, Jonathan, are you interested in taking a photography class? So he enrolled in the photography class, and the feedback that we got from his teacher was, wow, Jonathan is like really, really attentive during this class and really interested. So they would go out, all the students had their assignments, and Jonathan would use his communication device to do that. So that, again, that experience in high school was, person-centered planning. Well, Jonathan really enjoyed photography. Jonathan, do you want to pursue that?
Right.
Yeah. And
so music was really his big thing originally. And the photography sort of stumbled into because he was hanging out, right? And the camera was part of the device, just like the gift of the dove, right? And then it turned out, and if you think about it now, I just associate him with photography. The music thing I saw, I don't know how long ago. I remember, about the composition, but I had forgotten that. And I would always think of him as the photographer. I mentioned the digital thing only because there's a school in Scotland that teach people to perform with the computer, the music. And I wonder if it's called Drake Music Scotland. And I wonder if they'd love to see his composition, And so maybe offline we may work, we can work on that. We can follow up on that because it'd be pretty cool. And if when I saw this, it reminded me of him. So we're at the end point, but I want to extend it a few minutes in case people want to ask any questions. We could go on for another hour. I think we should do a part 2, and maybe Jack Yates will join us, Dianne, a month from now or something, where we talk more about transformation, because one of the things you can't help but talk about the individual, right? Because the whole issue is it's the individual who's causing the transformation, their inclusion, their gifts, their talents. But so often, I used to just worry about how my services were going in the old days when I wasn't at the Ark of Mass. And I wasn't thinking enough about people's gifts and their talents. I was thinking about, okay, let's find them a job. How quickly can we find them a job? We've got X people who are supposed to meet this outcome, for the funding. And stupid things get in the way. And I think we're at a place in our world today, at least in some sectors, right? In some groups, where we're realizing it's all about the personal plan. It's all about one's vision, and it's for all of us, right? It's for whether we have a disability or not. We're all going to have a disability at some point, but regardless, if someone has a disability or someone doesn't have a disability, let's really let them have a joyful, productive life that makes sense to them, And we always used to talk about non-negotiables too. What are those things that really because we can't get our way on everything. So what are the most important things, to us? Right. Anybody have a question, want to make a comment about this? And just to add that Stylo came about because there was an article this month that came out, not this month, now it's last month, February 2021, about doctors' perceptions that they did in the country. And it was still 82% thought people with a significant disability had basically not a great quality of life. And yet 40% of the people surveyed claimed they could serve people with disabilities well. And I'm thinking, how can you, if you're part of that 80%, right? Even if only 20% of you are part of that 80%, that's pretty scary that you think you're not aware enough, that you don't know that you're already putting limits on your medical care, your health care for that person, unintentionally maybe, but right. And that's really started driving me crazy about how do you really change people's perceptions and awareness. Any last comments anybody wants to make before or you want to say anything in closing and about this, or we will just, I'd love to have you back. We'll plan in advance for maybe like April, and see if Jack wants to join us and continue this.
Yeah, that would be great. And I had just, cleaning out some files, I came across an article, and it was all about, how our practices teach people with disabilities helplessness.
Yes.
And that was one of the things, in this article, I received it from the Family Leadership Series. So it wasn't like, it was written years ago. Matter of fact, one author is, I'm going to say his name wrong.
Wolfensberger.
Yes.
Wolfensberger.
Yes. Yes.
So this would it be from the 90s? No, if you were attending the class, or
I believe so. I mean, I went to the 4th Family Leadership Series. It had just started. Jonathan was born in 93. So I came into the picture at the right time because I have learned so much from some great pioneers.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things was, you may not be able to do for yourself, but you cannot learn how to be helpless because you have a mind. And right. My strong conviction is regardless of the severity of the disability, we have to be careful. There's so much about the brain that we don't know. And so when I hear a parent, and I'm not being, I'm compassionate, but I don't like when families say, well, my son or daughter is 12 years old, but has the mind of a 3-year-old. Don't say that.
Yeah.
You have to believe that there is something that your son or daughter understands so clearly that's going to bring out the gift.
Yes, yes. And by the way, Paul has said, thank you for taking us to your son's world, Diane. Jonathan sounds like a great guy. You're to be commended for your advocacy for him and family. Anna and Diane said, thank you, Diane. And then Deborah asked about how he's doing. What is he doing now? Um, Great example of caring teacher. I think he's doing a lot of the same, right? Photography
Yeah,
and
he's,
music.
yep, he's out right now. Right now he's out, working with his photography, and despite the pandemic, he was able to still get out, and work on the photography, and he's met so many people, on his path. So it's been a great ride, and he has, a direct support professional who has been with him now for, oh my gosh, 6 years. And
It's great.
yeah, it's been a great journey.
Well, thank you, everybody. I want to put a plug in for Thursday. Maura and Ellen are going to do state and federal affairs. I think they're going to talk about the budget advocacy and the vaccine advocacy. And again, I want to encourage people to send those emails in. Diane, thank you so much. This is great. Really uplifting. And it's, I know, we have more to do, but I think when you hear this stories that you shared and some of the transformation that happened, it's just so, it's doable, it gives hope.
Yeah,
And most of all, it adds to the world, like you said. So
that's right.
thank you very much. All right. And thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Bye-bye. Say hi to your sister.
Carrie, I love you.